first session today is on a topic that certainly isn't new, but it's still very important. And content consumption is a key indicator of purchase intent. And content is the most primary way that IT buying teams conduct vendor research. And when we do our annual media consumption research, we asked, how many pieces of content do you consume before you'll engage with a vendor sales rep? And 4 is the average number. So I know that might not seem like a huge amount, but I mentioned we're running almost 500 campaigns a quarter, and the majority of those have less than 3 assets. So if the end user is saying they need 4 and you have less than 3, it's going to be difficult to make really advancements there. And then looking at a real life case study, I mentioned TechTarget is constantly doing interviews with CIOs and senior leaders about their IT implementations at their organizations. And this is an example where we interviewed Nestle's CIO in January of this year about their global implementation of workplace team collaboration platform. And oftentimes when we write an article about an actual project that's implemented, we like to go back and see what that buyer's journey looked like. And you can see here, it's quite complex. There's 23 people at Nestle that are TechTarget members that are all actively doing research around the topic of team collaboration. And across those 23 people, they're consuming a lot of editorial content and vendor content. And it starts over a 6-7 month period, and it shows the importance. And I think if you look on the right-hand side, that some of the editorial content they're reading, when they're early on in March and April, they're reading content like building a unified communications and collaboration strategy. You get down into December and the content changes dramatically. Slack versus Teams versus Spark, which is the best collaboration tool. And that's why I mentioned content is a key indicator on where people are in that buy cycle. And having a wide mix of vendor content helps you interject yourself within these projects and get considered and shortlisted more. And we're going to have Sarah come up and talk about how HP Aruba undertook a content evaluation and what that meant for their business. So please welcome Sarah to the stage.
So I'm Sarah Dunn, and I'm part of the marketing team in Aruba. And Aruba is the networking division of HPE, for those of you that aren't aware. And the role that I do there is I lead the demand generation efforts. So that encompasses everything from marketing ops to campaign design and delivery. Okay, so sort of end-to-end demand gen is the way to think about the area of responsibility.
Great. So when you started this process, what drove it, and how did you go about it?
I've been enrolled for a couple of years now, but when I joined, it was really clear that we had lots and lots of content, but we didn't know what we had, right? And we didn't know when to use it and kind of how to access it. So we had really common problems. First and foremost, my team's purpose is to drive leads for sales, right? That's why we exist as a team. And we needed to increase both the quality and the quantity of the leads that we were generating. I think we can all share that as a common pain point. But the other thing was that was very clear was that we weren't being consistent in how we were presenting ourselves in market. And that's because we were taking a very disparate route to how we were using our content. So we weren't communicating all the benefits that Aruba has to solve networking pain points for our audience. Okay, so it felt like we were missing the mark and missing opportunities. I think it's worth as well touching on why you would go to the effort of doing this, because content marketing is one of those expressions that gets bandied around a lot. And when you start to dig into it, it's not an overnight fix, and it does take effort. And I think what we've got up here are some of the outcomes and the benefits, if you like, for this approach. And first and foremost, you're going to be more discoverable. The search results and the web conversion results that you expect to see by presenting your content in the right way are going to increase. People are more likely to look up your products and services if they've seen you in a content-style delivery. You're also going to be a lot more efficient because once you start to organise and structure your content, you can see that you have, excuse me, you have a lot of information, and actually you can curate that in a different way to make it suitable for different touch points on your customer journey, rather than looking at one big chunky piece and trying to get ROI out of a white paper, for example. There are multiple uses for that. So that re-delivery of information has made a huge difference actually to us, and how we can scale the investment into one key piece across multiple different touch points.
And most people, when they do the content audits, they do the standard awareness, consideration, decision. Did you approach that way, or any different?
We, I think, very much assumed that you put a lot of content at the top of the funnel, and it just naturally kind of seems to work it through magically and generate leads. I wish. It's not a spray and pray approach. We're firmly in the B2B camp, and our target audience ranges from 100 to 1,000 plus, organisational size, and it's a very diverse mix, and the networking requirements that you have will scale according to where you are on that organisational size. And what became apparent was that you've got to acknowledge that content addresses each stage of the funnel, and once you get your head around that, actually it becomes much more intuitive to think about how you can structure your content. One of the things that was interesting to us was that each stage of the funnel has different characteristics, right? So what are your audience looking to achieve at each stage? And it is this knowing who you want to talk to. And I know we all assume that we know who our target audience is, but I think you have to probably challenge yourself and say you might know that from an awareness perspective, because we kind of all live at the top of the funnel when we're trying to generate demand. But actually, as you work through, what is it that they need to achieve? Because if they're at consideration, late consideration, early decision, they probably don't want some of that lighter touch awareness content. That's become noise, and you've got to kind of work through that path with them. Once you take that approach and you know who you want to talk to, and you assume that they're in a degree of a research phase, it starts to feel a lot more easy to tackle this approach.
Yeah. Great. So we did the audit with you back in about a year ago, March.
Yeah, April.
Yeah. And this was the outcome, the initial outcome.
Yes, indeed. We weren't particularly surprised because, as I say, guilty as charged. We had been throwing a lot of content at the top of the funnel and hoping it would sort of, by gravity and luck, it would sort of progress people through. So we were very heavily rotated on awareness and much lighter on consideration and decision. I think the consideration one is the biggest challenge, because if you take a couple of the key points that we've got here about aligning solutions with business needs and comparing vendors, how you present yourself in that way makes a big difference to your target audience, because we've all got great propositions. We can all have those packaged into very snackable ways to communicate them. But actually, once you've got somebody's interest, you've got to explain how what you do can solve their problem. And that is notoriously hard to articulate. So once your content is in these clear buckets, what you can start to do is have a data point and an illustration to be able to go and negotiate, shall we say, the right kind of content that you need throughout your businesses. And sometimes that will go across business units. I work for a large organisation. It's scalable according to the larger organisation or the smaller organisation. The fact is, if people, for example, have product responsibility, they will want to talk about their product. That's great, but how does it work at consideration stage? And when you can start to articulate to somebody that, we're about 20% behind on what we need for consideration stage, and to be in the running when people are making procurement decisions, that starts to shift behaviours and attitudes rather than I want to just push my product out there. So this was really valuable because it allowed us to reframe how we approach building out a much more balanced content library.
Yeah, and this gave you a good idea of where you were, and then what next steps did you take to fill out those gaps and adjust your content strategy?
Yeah, definitely. And one of the benefits about doing this, in partnership with somebody,
is that you can have some objectivity. It's very hard when you work for, especially a tech company, to have objectivity on your own content. Now, I was relatively new in role, so I wasn't particularly biased. That said, trying to get a group of people who've been working on bringing a product and technology strategy to market, that they can only be biased about that content and assume that that content will solve, world peace and global hunger. There's a couple of takeaways here in that we found that we were talking about trends, which on the one hand makes you relevant, but actually we weren't talking about how we solve the problems those trends present. So a use case would be that more and more people are bringing more and more devices to work. They all want connectivity to those devices. If you're a network administrator, that's a really big headache that's only going to get bigger. So we might have an opinion about IoT as a vendor, but actually if you're in the awareness sort of consideration stage and I'm responsible for IT procurement, actually how are you going to make IoT less of a headache for me? And this analysis allowed us to challenge a lot of what we were sort of traditionally generating and distributing. We found as well that we were very heavily rotated on enterprise content. Aruba has grown through the acquisition of enterprise accounts, so that wasn't surprising, but certainly that mindset of our content generation guys across the business was enterprise, and actually what we needed to do was to, for the next phase of our growth objectives, is to establish ourselves as a mid-market contender and not just an enterprise player. So in light of that, again, you've got a data point that allows you to start that conversation, saying, can we change the language, can we make this more approachable? The calibre of the technology doesn't change, but how you use it in a different market segment does. And also, our messaging was really inconsistent, because we were talking about trends, we were talking about products. What we weren't trying to convey is actually that we have a flexible mobile-first architecture that is scalable across the size of your organisation. And that wasn't coming through anywhere. And I think, you definitely need that objectivity to help you have an external lens on what it is that you're doing.
I think that's good points. I mean, most everyone in the room probably make assumptions about what your content looks like, but until you actually go through the process of doing an audit, laying it out, that's when you really start to see the true trends. Like the 20% in IoT, that was a lot higher than we had wanted. The fact that enterprise is still going to be a big play for Aruba, but they wanted to move into the mid-market, and we didn't have content that spoke to the mid-market. So you learn those things at the beginning of a campaign versus 9 months in, you're like, wait, this isn't performing as well as we hoped for, and then that's when you're backtracking. So I think it's really good to do this up front. So looking at some of the results of the campaign, I mean, obviously when we went live, Aruba wasn't influencing any of our audience. We took a look at the 500 most active networking accounts doing research on our network. And I think the trends are pretty impressive. I mean, it went from 0%, 6 months in, 19% all the way up to in the high 20s, and that's a lot of progress being made within the most active accounts doing research.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that I'd like to stress about this is obviously it's a really pleasing trajectory and we expect it to continue. But one of the takeaways I'd like people to have is that it's not a silver bullet, and it's an audit, albeit it's a standalone exercise. You then have to commit to running it and running content marketing, and it takes work. It won't self-generate. You have to curate the content, you have to feed the digital touch points with all of the content that you're aligning to your customer journey. But it also isn't go and hire 3 more people, right, which obviously isn't realistic for the majority of us. It's actually almost a reshaping, and that's what I've seen in my team, is a real reshaping of how they approach their roles. So if you're a campaign manager, actually what you're going to be thinking about is how do I feed these digital channels so that actually my campaign is being delivered in this way according to the customer journey, which is actually, once you get up and running, you get a really natural cadence with it, and it becomes a really rewarding model to work with.
I mean, I think overall Aruba's done a good job of having a large mix of content for all the buying phases, but they're also invested time and effort in creating local content. And here's a good example of a German company, Commerce Bank. and how much content they consume. And the dates are quite small, but this was over a 10-day period, 7 different assets from Aruba. And that allows you to make real progress and provide some important insights into sales. And we still see a common challenge when we're running campaigns with the lack of local language content. And I've always said if you're going to make serious progress in the market, you need to invest in localized resources.
And not all at once. That would be the other takeaway, is this can feel a little bit like trying to eat an elephant. If you've got a lot of content, or actually you haven't got any content, there is an essence of kind of where do I start? Where do I begin to navigate this? And we did it by topic and by language. And so, unsurprisingly, the UK, France, German markets generate a larger percentage of our business in Western Europe, so those are priority languages. And we did the UK first, because home turf, and we set that cadence up, and then we pulled in existing bits of French and German content to replicate that framework. Okay, so you sort of bolt it on, a bit like Lego. You literally bolt it on as you go, and take stock as you go. But I completely agree with you in the fact that if you can't do it in local language, don't do it. And don't do it as a hybrid of some English and some French, for example. It just doesn't land well. You wouldn't put a print ad in an English print ad in a French magazine. It's the same for this. It's like, don't disrupt their journey. But also the journeys don't have to be particularly sophisticated. This is really rewarding, obviously, for us to see as a vendor, but we can go out and create all of these new assets. And contrary to a popular belief with large companies, I don't have a big budget. So the curation of existing information into different assets is where we spend our money.
Yeah. I think you've said this a few times. You're not going to do this all at once.
No.
So you do a content audit, you realize, we're lacking decision stage content, we don't have any French content, German content. It almost becomes overwhelming if you think you have to complete all this in a 1-2 month time frame. And not many people have a content marketer that their job is to create content. Wouldn't that be nice? So the content creators are usually doing other jobs at the same time. So I think you lay out a roadmap. We're going to have a goal to create one asset, in German, one asset in French this month, one asset next month, create some decision stage content, and then you fast forward 6 months and it looks a lot different than when you started. I think that's the important thing. It's not going to all happen at once. And then this is a nice flow that we all like to see. It doesn't always happen like this. I wish it did, but this shows 3 individuals and how they really self-nurture themselves with Aruba's mix of content. And we're starting with, in some cases, awareness stage content. It's in consideration to decision stage. And one of the things we noticed when we realized we had lacked decision stage content, we actually found some good content we could use. And this last piece was it's a comparison, Aruba versus Cisco Meraki, and it's a great late stage asset, and it gained really good traction. And again, it's another example in the middle, the Spanish content. Again, investing in that content in region so these users and companies can self-nurture themselves.
And I'd hasten to add that it didn't look like this in the beginning, okay? We didn't start with this lovely outcome. We had to grow into it, and it's really rewarding to see. And when you start to see your content mix, and this is why aligning to the stage of the customer journey is so important, it starts to self-nurture, which is a dream. Anything, we all love automation, but actually when you're presenting content in a way that is allowing people to move through a journey at their own pace, right, according to where they are in their particular buying and research cycles, that feels really satisfying, because it feels like they're driving their own bus rather than they're being pushed content at. And I'm very conscious as a large technology vendor that we have a tendency to push really hard, and people just get turned off. You know yourselves in your own lives, in your own careers. If somebody's hounding you digitally, you're like, it's just, forget it. And it's no different when they're researching access points.
Here's an example of another noisy buyer journey. So City of Westminster, we confirmed a SD-WAN project in July. You can see Aruba was able to influence this after the project was confirmed. And I think this just speaks to, if you're leading with just awareness stage content, you don't have any late stage content. When these projects are confirmed, they could still be going on for 6, 9, 12 months. So having content down the funnel helps you interject and get access to them. So this is a good example of Aruba being able to do that.
Yeah, it is. It illustrates just the right content at the right time.
And this is what we love to see. When we looked at all of the confirmed networking projects that we had at TechTarget, and when we started the campaign, Aruba was being shortlisted for 6% of those. And then fast forward a year, we looked at the projects confirmed in this Q1, and we're at 14%. So, I mean, let's put some numbers behind that. So for every 100 projects we're confirming, Aruba's now being shortlisted in 8 more of those. And we're confirming about 150 projects, a little less than that, a quarter. So you fast forward that out for a full year, and Aruba's now being shortlisted for 35, 40 more new projects than they were before. And every vendor has their own win rate, but most people say, if you give me a seat at the table, I'm going to win half the deals. So you can just work out the math. 40 new deals, you win half. What's your average cost per deal? And that's just purely by having an always-on content strategy. I think it's really telling of the power of what content marketing can do.
As with everything, the results speak for themselves, and another really pleasing trajectory that we expect to continue, because what we've done in the last year is to build a framework and a foundation for both how we work, but also how we work within the TechTarget environment. And the metrics and the performance that we can get, you can see it behind us, allows you to have a different conversation internally without a shadow of a doubt. There's a point to think about as well in that there's a lot of upfront work for this, but it does pay off. We can see this from the opportunities that we can now present to our salespeople. So whilst you may have an account manager in existence and they know that there's a deal, being able to share the content that account is consuming allows another point of engagement for your sales audience, for example. And then the internal conversations that I have more of are about working with product marketing and being able to say, look, we're seeing engagement here. This asset type and this content is working. We'd like some more of that, please. Focusing on that decision stage of the journey, rather than, can I have 3 more white papers? Right? It gives you a data point to change your conversations, which has just been priceless, accompanied with the results that you can see up here. So yeah, we'll have some more, please.
Yeah, that's our job. Some learnings. I mean, I think that one key one is like what Sarah talked about earlier, is like know your audience and make sure your content speaks to that audience. I mean, I heard a good tip once from a marketer that says before they release any new asset, they take it to both their sales leaders and their IT team to see if that would resonate for the audience they're trying to reach. I mean, let's face it, like sometimes the content that we create doesn't actually hit home with the people that we're trying to communicate to. So I think it's important before you unleash this big strategy and create 15 new assets that you make sure that you are in line with sales on who we're trying to speak to, and more importantly, does the content we're creating actually resonate with that audience? And if you can do that, I think you make a lot more progress. And that's when you see companies downloading 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 assets. It's because the content is relevant to what their job's are about. And then I don't know how much time we have, but if we have any questions, I think we might have a few minutes. Or if you have any parting thoughts or anything you want to add.
I think we've kind of covered everything that I can share. I'm happy to take any questions at any point, of course. Too early in the morning.
We have.
We relied a lot on the metrics that TechTarget were able to give us. That was our benchmark, because we literally weren't doing anything, or if we were doing stuff in a very disparate way. So you might have a country doing a quarter's worth of content syndication and they go off again. So we just assumed a zero benchmark. And one of the reasons that we partnered with TechTarget was so that we could have that visibility, because it's one of the things we struggle with internally. Naturally as well, classic campaign IDs, lead sources, those sort of standard tools that you use to measure the effectiveness of your execution, we use those as well. And we now see the content syndication work that we do, and Priority Engine as well, show up as regular lead sources. So we can plot the increase in lead source references to that curve that you saw at the end.
That's why we're having a session on it later. a lot of organizations, big and small,
Attribution, right?
have problem, we know we run a successful campaign, but like Sarah can't go back and punch a button to show all this in their own systems, and that's something that, as an industry, we all have to get better at.
We have a lot of very product videos that come from our parent company. So there are videos and there are videos. I think, like most media formats, it's about the mix. The right videos, early stage, are really valuable. They get lots of engagement. As you go through each of those stages of the journey, one of the things that we are looking to do now is introduce video as part of the mix at that late consideration stage. So when we were talking about consideration earlier and talking about how you demonstrate how your solutions solve a pain point, if you think of it as sort of how-to content, that's where our maturing in video needs to go. So as a media form, absolutely, because people retain more of what they see. It's just proven given any industry. But I think you've then got to challenge again, what are the characteristics you need at the stage of the customer journey that you can put into video?
We found the video case studies work really well, especially when you're trying to reach a senior audience like CIO. They're not going to download a 10, 12-page white paper, but they're happy to watch a Q&A with someone from their industry. So, I mean, I think video serves a really good purpose. You could have a short-form video, 1-2 minutes, that does a really good job of getting early awareness stage, and then, as Sarah said, you can use it for late stage, more reaching that senior audience.
We had an excellent tutor, so it didn't take us very long at all. But we did make the commitment to ring fence each afternoon for a week to prioritise it. And we weren't going to do it until we knew that we could give it that time, because you can't just have a meeting on a Monday and decide you're going to do it when you can between your emails. You need the brain time to sort of sit and think about it and to challenge some of the content, because it won't naturally fall into a distinct stage, and you'll have lots of opinions about that. But we did it a piece at a time. So we didn't try and do all of the portfolio. We did English and we did, what did we do? We did wireless in English first, because it's our biggest bang for our buck. And then we took the same kind of approach as we went through it.
One of the challenges is knowing where all your content lives. If you can have access to all of your content, doing the audits, it's a process that could take, a week. Then the hard part comes of like putting the roadmap together to create new content to fill in the gaps. Great. Well, thanks so much, Sarah. I really appreciate you
Thank you,
sharing your
everyone.
experience. Yeah.